The Barbie movie smashed box office records and ignited a firestorm on the right. We'll do our best to dissect the politics of the movie. Then the date is set for Trump's trial over his misuse of classified documents. We'll discuss what the timing means for his future. Then we'll dive into the GOP primary, who qualified for the debates, whose campaign is up, whose is down. Then we'll turn our attention to the world of country music, where a debate is brewing over what small towns really want, a perfect majority 54 discussion. Finally, a Democrat and a Republican did something together that we thought was pretty cool and made us feel good, which is why we thought it'd be fun to end the show with it this week. This is Majority 54.
All right, Jason, I take it you didn't see Barbie. We haven't talked about this yet.
I actually do want to see it. I have not had a chance because you have met my children. I have two of them. And I don't do, and anytime I go do anything, you know about it because I'm very excited about it for months. And so since I hadn't mentioned it, you know I haven't seen it.
I haven't.
What about you? I would have thought you might have seen it.
I know. I'm planning to do it. I was in LA for work, and then was too busy with playing 10 hours of tennis with our mutual friend Sujit to get out there and see this movie.
Our lives are so alike.
Yeah,
and
so
Robbie,
like
it was hot. It was hot out here too to be playing tennis. For the audio listeners, this is Brett Meiselas. I'm one of the co-founders of MeidasTouch, joining the Majority 54 guys today. I guess I'll be the resident Barbie expert.
Yes, I need you
today because I'm, I guess, the only one out of the three of us who saw the film. But I gotta say,
do your Ben Shapiro impression. Give us your review.
Okay, so I think it was very woke, and we had a lot of woke things going on. And I bought $100 worth of Barbies, and I threw them all out because the patriarchy, it's just so ridiculous. It's not bad. It's not bad.
Can I just hold on? I just like to comment. The speed was perfect. Your impression.
The key is the speed. The key is you want to speak as if you're on fast forward mode, because the one comment I always
you're like one toke of helium away from having it. So anyway,
next time I'll break out the balloon next time. But I think you two are, and me, quite possibly the only two people in America who did not see the Barbie movie this weekend, because even when I was there, so I did the Barbenheimer weekend. I did Oppenheimer one day, and then I did Barbie the next day. Both times I went into the theater, it was absolutely packed as if it were like the before times. It felt like pre-COVID times. And it was, honestly, just that kind of element of community and that element of seeing people out enjoying themselves. You know, you had like 70% of the people in the movie theater all decked out in pink from head to toe. It felt like a moment in like the cultural zeitgeist, which we've kind of been missing from society in the past few years. And I think it's something that extends beyond politics. But of course, as with anything, they got to jam the politics into it, no matter what it is. And to be fair, it is a movie with a lot of political undertones and overtones and messages. It was actually a pretty deep movie at the end of the day.
It's like satirical, right?
Yes, satirical, very self-reflexive. It's funny. The one of the jokes that I've been seeing like throughout TikTok and all these apps are people going, I'm paraphrasing, something to the effect of, this weekend I saw a movie about the existential crisis of life and the, and then I saw Oppenheimer. That's like the setup for like every joke online, but it was deep. It was self-reflexive. It was slapstick. It was satirical. It was very well written. It certainly had a pointed message. It knew what it was. And for a movie that's about, let's face it, a commercialized product of plastic dolls, it had a lot of layers to it, and it did a really good and effective job, I think, at conveying the message. I think Greta Gerwig did an incredible job. I would say, like, I remember when I saw the trailer for the first time, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good movie. Like they're actually not messing around with this. But like the production design, I thought was incredible. I thought the writing was incredibly strong. The cast is great. I think Margot Robbie, I think, was incredible, and I know she was a producer also behind the scenes who put the whole thing together. We had Ryan Gosling really committed to the bit, like 150%, and I thought he was just absolutely fantastic. Michael Cera played like the awkward Alan character, Michael Cera. Yeah. And I thought it was really fun. If this were a movie review show, which it is not, I'd probably give it a solid B. which still may upset some people. But Oppenheimer was just such an A+. Oppenheimer is such a masterpiece.
Well, Brett, somebody who did not enjoy this film was your cousin Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. What did Ben say? Tell me what did Ben say here? I need it.
Let's play this. It's not much different, actually. Audio listeners might not know the difference. Let's go to this first Ben Shapiro clip. Get ready, everybody. Hold on to your seats.
Well, folks, I just got back from the theaters seeing Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm about to review both of them. I'm going to tell you which one of these is the best blockbuster of 2023 and which one is maybe the worst.
I bet he loved our movie, right, Ken?
For those of you who can't wait that long, I'm going to give my review of the Barbie movie in the most Oppenheimer fashion.
What the Run.
So for audio listeners, Ben Shapiro is lighting Barbie dolls on fire right now.
So the things I do for my audience, my producers dragged me to go see Barbie the movie. And I have thoughts. This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Let me begin with my generalized assessment of the movie. This movie is not just a piece of shit. This movie is a flaming piece of dog shit piled atop an entire dumpster on fire, piled atop a landfill filled with dog shit. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. On every possible level, it is a horrific movie. The only thing that can be said for this film is production design.
So, okay, first of all, that's a freebie to ExpressVPN. We should send them an invoice.
Yeah, it's apparently the one thing that we and Ben agree on is ExpressVPN.
Yeah, and just so the listeners,
I don't know if we agree if they're not paying us again.
Yeah, no, I still use it. I'll be real. I still use it. I use it to get around the MLB blackout rules. But anyway.
Yeah, and just so the listeners are clear, that was not me doing an impression of Ben Shapiro. Yeah. That was actually Ben Shapiro. One of the hilarious things from that clip, he goes at the end, he goes, my producers dragged me to see this, and so I have to see it. Oh, okay. And if you notice in the clip, he's literally dressed as Ken from the movie. Like there is a scene from the movie where
is that what it is?
Ben Shapiro went to the movie dressed as Ken. I don't know if this was
what's funny is if it's unintentional would be the best.
Is that what the jean jacket is? I thought the jean jacket was a joke.
I don't know about the jean jacket. Did he play multiple Kens in the movie? I don't know.
No, maybe that's just a jacket Ben Shapiro wears. Nice jacket, Ben. I thought it was a joke.
But based on his sort of volume and intonation of his voice, it seems like he might have more in common with Ken than just the outfit.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's not hard to see why Ben Shapiro, would be upset over this because it kind of takes aim at his whole entire attitude about gender norms and culture. But let's face it, Ben Shapiro was not going to enter this movie with an open mind. Ben Shapiro saw that movie specifically so that he could then go and record a 42-minute think piece, if you want to call it, on his thing, which is like half the length of the Barbie movie, to be clear. Like he did a very long review, and when they do all this, it's their way to me, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, but it seems like such an obvious ploy to me there. It doesn't matter what the movie is about whatsoever. They know that they could attach themselves to this cultural phenomenon. You could get the headline where he goes, Ben Shapiro destroys Barbie. I don't know if he destroyed it. The movie made more money than God in the theaters. So if
200 million in 5 days.
If that's destruction, really? and internationally, I think over 350. So
forget what you think that Barbie, you got to think about how this, like the amount of merchandise they've sold around this too. Like it's crazy.
It's a cultural phenomenon. And one of the interesting, absolutely. Yeah. And one of the interesting statistics also over it, and I don't have the map to pull up right now, but there were maps that were going around that were showing which movies were more popular in which states. And I found it incredibly interesting because it kind of oddly looked like an electoral map.
Really?
But to the surprise of, maybe not to the surprise of us, the red states in the country were more inclined to watch and enjoy Barbie, while the blue states were more inclined to go see Oppenheimer over the weekend. And so for all these campaigns by the right, by the Ben Shapiros, by these MAGA influencers to quote unquote destroy Barbie, at the end of the day, Barbie actually ended up succeeding, obviously, with flying colors. And not only that, specifically in the red states, it did even better, than it did even in the blue states, which I think is pretty amazing.
Can I ask you a question that has nothing to do with any of this? How did the Barbie and Oppenheimer double feature become a thing? Because that's just the most genius marketing thing I've seen in like forever. Like, how did they do that?
It really is genius. I don't know how it came to be, but one of the things that I appreciated that the producers and the filmmakers did around it was they could have easily made it a competition, and they could have went after each other, but they really went all in on Barbenheimer weekend. You got to see both. And that was very unusual. I know like a week before or so, the Mission Impossible movie came out. And so I know they didn't want to release Oppenheimer on that weekend, especially because Christopher Nolan shot this movie in IMAX, and the IMAX theaters were reserved for Mission Impossible. And when Oppenheimer came out, Christopher Nolan actually took over all the IMAX theaters. And apparently the Tom Cruise camp and the Mission Impossible people were not too pleased that he only had about a week in the IMAX theaters. But I think they just went all in. They were smart about it. They kind of joined forces for the promotion. And I think it was like one of the first weekends in like an incredibly long time where one movie made over 100 million and the other movie made over 50 million in the same weekend. So both movies overperformed, both did great. Both are really well reviewed. And despite Ben Shapiro's attempts at destruction, they remain unscathed.
It's like Terminator 2 and Point Break, Jason, when those two.
Yeah. Well, I bet more movies pull this move. So I'm shocked that Ben didn't like it. I mean,
well, I do, because I'm a masochist here. Let's do at least one more piece of this Shapiro thing. Like, let's get to the substance of this. He seemed to take issue with the notion of the patriarchy, or the depiction of the patriarchy in this movie. Let's go to this clip.
You have Helen Mirren saying, because Barbie can be anything, women can be anything. At least that's what the Barbies think. See, in the real world, women can't be anything. And that's one of the messages of the film. In the real world, men run pretty much everything, which is weird. Who greenlit this piece of shit? I mean, Greta Gerwig is a lady. She's making a good living off of this. Margot Robbie is playing the lead. In fact, the entire cast, aside from basically Ryan Gosling, is women. So it seems like women are doing okay. But again, put aside the meta logic of it.
Okay, can I, before we even go into it, this is one of my favorite of their moves, right? It's like, because these three individuals making a point have money, and success and opportunity, none of the people who they're making the point on behalf of can possibly struggle. Because Colin Kaepernick seems to get 3 square meals a day and is not starving to death, there's no such thing as police brutality or systemic racism, right? I mean, it's just like such a tired move, but it usually does work, I guess, with a certain part of the population.
It's amazing.
I just wanted to point that out.
Well,
that's such a good point.
In case it's worth pointing out, like even the executive team of Mattel is basically all male. Of the Fortune 500 companies, only 52 CEOs are women. You can go through the U.S. Senate, you can go to the U.S. Congress.
I have a statistic about that Diana taught me just the other day, which is that there are actually, if you combine the amount of Fortune 500 CEOs named Michael and the amount of Fortune 500 CEOs named Tom that are Fortune 500 CEOs, if you combine the Michaels and the Toms who are Fortune 500 CEOs, it is actually, I believe, a number greater than the overall amount of women who are CEOs in the Fortune 500. So I think there's more Michaels and Toms.
That's absolutely bonkers. But Jason, Greta Gerwig seems pretty successful, so all the other problems seem to just go away, right? Greta Gerwig. I mean,
it's a great
ultimately, ultimately, he obviously misses the point. He intentionally misses the point. And it's, it's a movie that does hold up a mirror to society, but it also holds up a mirror to itself. Like, one of the things that I really liked about it was that it was incredibly self-reflexive. Like, to your point, Ravi, the fact that Mattel has like almost all male CEOs, they had a Mattel boardroom, not to give away, anything important. The Mattel boardroom in the Barbie movie was all men. And that was part of the joke as well. And they constantly ripped into Mattel, who was a producer on the movie. And they ripped into Mattel's many missteps with Barbie. They ripped into Barbie's effect on the psyche of women and girls. And I thought it was interesting how they were able to take a movie about this property, and they were able to get this script approved basically by the studios and Mattel that honestly was as much of a criticism of them and of itself as it was of broader society. And I thought that was just an interesting element that was kind of brought into all this.
There's, there was a separate controversy here, just worth mentioning. Ted Cruz pointed out that there was this map in the movie, apparently, that showed the so-called 9-dash line, which indicates Chinese ownership of an oceanic territory that's disputed under international law that the Vietnamese are unhappy about. I challenge our audience to go down the rabbit hole on the internet on this one. I actually think there's something to this particular part of the controversy, but I don't think it's worthy of airtime. But it is weird, and it's worth checking out.
Yeah, the map also looks like it was drawn by a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Like it literally, like also like Africa is like extremely close to the United States, and the United States looks like a football. Like nothing is. It's not quite an accurate map. And I think even there were like 8 dashes and not even 9 dashes on the part he was talking about. But it's just, it's they were going to try to pick this thing apart. They wanted it to be another thing where they go, oh, look, go woke, go broke. Right. You know what they say, go woke. Go. But it didn't quite hit that way. But I think it speaks to a broader kind of sense, to me at least, about how kind of out of touch these politicians can be with just people at large. Like, one of the cool things to me about going to see this movie, I wasn't going with politics on my mind. I was excited to go to a movie, be a part of something in the cultural zeitgeist, and to see hundreds and hundreds of people at the theater, like I was saying earlier, to see everybody excited, wearing the pink clothes, or there were even people dressed up for Oppenheimer, like in specific, like it was just a cool vibe. And I think people just really want to be able to live their lives and not constantly be a football in this culture war game that Ben Shapiro and Ted Cruz and all these people try to rope them into.
Yeah, I think it's funny.
What's funny about that?
Oh, Jason, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, what's funny about that is like the main criticism, and this may be what you're going to say, of the left by the right so often is that we're just too sensitive and we ruin everything fun. Right. And it just feels like that's what they're doing. People seem to be having fun with this, and they're like ruining it.
Well, yeah. Think about the Yellowstone, for example. It's a TV show that it's like the most popular TV show in the country. Now, Kevin Costner is the star of Yellowstone. He's a longtime Democratic donor, right? The show is very unkind to liberals. Like, it's unquestionably, it's all about essentially Californians moving to Montana and ruining the place. And it caricatures liberals for sure. I still watch the show. I don't whine about it. It's a bit of a caricature, but it's an entertaining show. And I think it's one of those things that the more you, with exceptions like Bud Light in certain areas where they've been emboldened on the right, with those kinds of exceptions, by and large, the more you whine about something, and we'll learn more about this as we get later on. We start talking about country music, but the more you complain about stuff, the more you kind of embolden people and alienate your audience. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. Like, he all but predicted that this would have a strong weekend, but then fizzle out. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's a bad prediction.
No, I mean, like, it's not gonna. I mean, people like me, like, I'm still gonna see it at some point. Yeah. So,
well, okay. Well, let's talk about Trump here. And Brett, I'd love to keep you on for this just to get your opinion about this. But they just set a trial date for May of 2024, and Jason, you know how this stuff works. My sense is if they set a trial date, this is for the classified documents case in May of 2024, maybe this thing doesn't even happen during the election season, given that that's the starting point.
I don't know. I mean, there would have to, in this case, I think there would have to be. Do you mean like it'll be over by then, or do you mean like it'll get continued and continued until
continued? Yeah. I mean, I was just reading about this law, the Classified Information Procedures Act, and how complicated it is, and just the sheer number of documents. Like according to NPR, there's more than 1.1 million pages of non-classified discovery thus far, 9 months of camera footage, over 1,500 pages of classified discovery. Everybody needs to get security clearances. A lot of this stuff has to be read in a skiff. Like this thing and you have a motivated judge who probably has a lot of reasons to want to kick this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately we're dealing with Donald Trump, right? It's not like the guy has a lot of moves that he uses. It's not like he's got a lot of moves in his arsenal. And the one thing that he does without fail is he tries to delay everything. He tries to make excuses. He tries to put things off. Now, in a vacuum, I would say this May date actually seems pretty solid. And I think it's something that the prosecution, and I'm speaking about this, just as a layman, as a non-lawyer, as someone who, listens to the various lawyers on our network. But the May trial date actually seems like a pretty reasonable trial date that I don't think would knock any other judge for. Judge Cannon, of course, comes with all this other baggage that you want to think there's nefarious intent behind everything she does. I'm not so sure that's the case here. I think when you had Jack Smith asking for December, and when you had the Trump not the Trump campaign, but Donald Trump himself and his team asking for postponement until after the election, I think Jack Smith was kind of hoping that they would meet somewhere in the middle and do it sometime in the spring. And so I bet DOJ is actually pretty satisfied with this. And you can kind of view it also by seeing like who are the angry people in Trump's camp at the decision. Like, do they seem happy or do they seem mad? And a lot of them seem very upset about this decision. Now, the risk is, is this a firm trial date or is this not a firm trial date? And like I said before, Donald Trump will try to do as many things as possible to try to get this pushed. And then the ball's going to be in Judge Cannon's hands. And that's when we'll really see what she's made of. Is she going to accept his excuses and push it back? Or is she going to let the trial go on as intended? She set a pretty rigorous schedule with a lot of deadlines for these lawyers to get the various clearances that they need, for them to submit various filings. And so she actually seemed to be pretty thorough with this scheduling. And now it's just a matter of kind of wait and see. It's going to be right in the heart of kind of the election. Obviously, it's going to be in the heart of like the Republican National Convention, the primaries, and all of that. And Trump is going to try to use all of that to his advantage to push the trial. But the fact is, and this is obviously my opinion, that Trump should be treated like any other defendant should be treated, and running for president should not be a get out of jail free card, because then any bank robber, when he got arrested, would go, "Hold up, I'm running for president. You got to push my trial. I'm running. You got to." So, we will see, but I don't think it's any reason just yet to anything to be nervous about just yet.
I think it happens in May, and the reason, and look, I agree. I think it makes sense that they had to push it that long. You got 1.1 million documents to go through, but I think it's going to be hard to push it further, because at the end of the day, the documents are being produced by the defense. And so it's not like the defense gets to say, "Hey, you haven't given us time, right, to go through these," because like they belong to the defendant, or they don't. They actually belong to the United States. That's the issue. But they were produced by the defendant. The other thing is, the only way it gets delayed, in my opinion, is if Judge Cannon is truly looking for reasons. But then it's May or it's post-November, right, of 24, because you're not going to delay it further into the election season and have either side be happy about that. So I think you're going to have the lawyers on the Trump side working very hard to find evidentiary issues about what can be submitted to a jury, what can be considered, and trying to find controversy. The problem I think they're going to have is that the prosecution is going to be very motivated to move forward with the trial, which is unlike a lot of trials with defense. Like oftentimes that, the defendant might be in a hurry for a speedy trial here, they're not. But the prosecution, unless it's going to be something they think the case is going to hang on, they might concede to a lot of things that the defense wants in order to keep there from being sticking points. One, because they want to have the trial before he can potentially become president and pardon himself. But two, they've got like 2 or 3 other trials to get to, and they got to get through this one first. So the Justice Department, I think, is going to be, or special counsel is going to be motivated for that reason.
Yeah, and one historical, I mean, there's no historical comp, but one case that people are writing about as instructive is the Oliver North case, where there was a lot of classified information, and it was like the government had a lot they were trying to hide there. So they were dropping charges to try to speed that along and avoid embarrassment, which is, I don't think is going to happen here, but it is going to be tricky trying to navigate the introduction of some of this evidence in court, given that some of it is by its very nature extremely dangerous to national security. It'll be interesting to watch. I also think it's a big question to wonder, like, are some of these other cases going to slip into the calendar? So, now that, given that there's a pretty wide gap in the calendar, does Bragg jump in? Does Georgia jump in? Does this pending DC case that has fewer classified documents, and you'd imagine, does that slip into the calendar? Right? There's definitely room for something,
And Donald Trump's legal calendar is already filling up. I've had some lawyers joke. I've had some lawyers joke to me that Donald Trump is going to be in court more than they are in the next months and over the next year. Like, they have more court appointments, and you have, like, in October of this year, the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. You have in January of 2024 the other E. Jean Carroll defamation case. In January, you also have another class action fraud case against Trump. You have the Stormy Daniels Manhattan case in March of 2024. You have this case. Donald Trump is about to be indicted again by Jack Smith for crimes relating to 2020 election interference and the actions surrounding January 6th. And that is imminent. That could come today, could come tomorrow, could come next week. That is right there out in front of us. We have Fani Willis in Georgia, who is going to hit him with racketeering charges, apparently. And so, not good times ahead for Donald Trump. He's going to be embroiled in many legal battles. It's going to cost him a whole lot of money, a whole lot of time. He's going to be spending a lot of his PAC money on these attorneys and various legal teams. And it's all going to be right in the thick of these elections, where the Republicans are likely going to nominate somebody who is standing both criminal and civil trial for multiple crimes spanning from fraud to defamation to you name it, to racketeering. Like, they're really serious crimes, and it's just going to keep coming.
Well,
let's talk
this.
Oh, sorry, Jason.
I was just going to say, this would be a great year to relaunch court TV. I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's gonna be wall to wall.
We got the MeidasTouch. We got the MeidasTouch Network.
You're right. I'm sorry. Maybe MeidasTouch should just rebrand as Court TV, man. I mean, it's incredible, dude.
It's funny. I know some of the people involved in Court TV, and they live in some big ass houses. They made a lot of money off of that.
Can I ask a question before we get into the next part? Is, like, I'm trying to remember the actual calendar, like, of the Iowa caucus is in January or February?
I think January, yeah.
Like,
they usually are, yeah.
It more than likely, from a delegate perspective, he's the presumptive nominee by the time he stands and hears the actual charges against him in May of 2024.
Yeah, he had wrapped it up by then last time. So just to take stock,
it just goes to prove. Wasn't it? It just goes to prove the old political advice that they always say, which is, like, make sure to schedule your criminal trials after your party has chosen their nominee, so that you can keep everyone's attention from the day the nominee is chosen until actual election day and focus it on you and your criminality. I mean, it's genius.
That old political adage. I've heard.
And all press is good press. Well, okay, let's take stock of this Republican primary, which, Brett, as you talked about, Trump, I mean, one thing he doesn't have to worry about right now is the other candidates in the field. He is crushing his opponents. If you look at the Iowa RCP average, Trump is averaging 50, which is an ominous number. DeSantis 17, Scott 7.7, Ramaswamy 4.3, ahead of the rest of the pack. And you heard it here first, everybody. We flagged him back when he was a nobody, when he was just grifting from pharmaceutical companies before you knew who he was. Now, it doesn't seem like he has a lot to worry about. DeSantis is dropping. DeSantis also just announced that he's cutting a third of his staff. Doesn't sound great for him. Now, the way they're positioning this, guys, is, hey, this is what McCain did, and he rescued his campaign. Now, I've got one piece of bad news for the DeSantis people, is that Ron DeSantis is no John McCain.
No.
John McCain is the kind of guy that the more time voters spent with him, the more they liked him. And it was in his nature to be a maverick. And he was just riding the bus with our buddy Mike Murphy, just making havoc. But I just can't imagine that the more voters see of Ron DeSantis, the more they're going to like him. But maybe I'm going to live to regret this voice, because I was bullish on him before.
He's Scott Walker and Tim Pawlenty. He's not John McCain.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, the more people get to know him, the less they like him. And we've seen that. Like, DeSantis put a lot of resources and spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. The longer he was there, the worse his polls went. Right. Usually when you're meeting people, shaking hands, doing your polls should experience some bump. They cratered. And you kept seeing these interactions with folks. And the guy was like an alien. The guy was it's like he never interacted with human beings in his entire life. And he would kind of half-ass shake their hand and then rub snot on his hands and then shake their hand. Or someone would be like, Mr. DeSantis. There was this funny, hilarious clip where someone was like, Mr. DeSantis, I drove out here 2 hours to see you. It's so nice to meet you. And he goes, oh, nice to meet you. Cool. Okay, bye.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, that's great. Those are those great. That's that charisma that everyone's been talking about. But
unreal.
Have you all ever spent significant time around or in the presence of a politician who is not good at being a politician? Who is kind of uncomfortable?
Yeah, but you have to own it. So a good example, and if you're listening, Carl, I apologize, but this is actually meant to be a compliment. But this is so Carl Dean, who is the mayor of Nashville, is one of my favorite people ever. He was an amazing mayor, but he was an atrocious retail politician. I mean, awkward, nerdy guy. But he was really good at being mayor, and he owned it, right? It was part of his charm that he was a bit of an introvert as a mayor. Now, he was a nerdy introvert, and that was his thing. I don't get the sense that DeSantis is self-aware enough to have a thing, other than he's kind of a jock, kind of a bully, trying to be a little. He's trying to play the technocrat here and there. He's doing Trump impressions. I just don't think he's settled on an image.
So what you're talking about, though, I want to be specific. So Carl Dean is an example of somebody, as you pointed out, who does not have a natural skill set for retail politics. But what makes Carl Dean still an effective politician is that he does not hold himself out to be comfortable at an event like that. He doesn't pretend he is. So what would make Carl Dean not good at this is if he were to be like, I'm great at all of this. Yeah. And aren't I normal and relatable and just like everyone else? Right. And it takes you back now, somebody who is pretty good, obviously, at that kind of stuff. Obama was as good as it gets at broadcast wholesale politics, but he admittedly, was not he was not Bill Clinton when it came to retail politics. And there's that great story that Axe tells about them being downstate in Illinois and Obama, when he was running for Senate, and Obama ordering Grey Poupon, and Axe telling him you can't order Grey Poupon, and Obama being like, look, man, my name is Barack Hussein Obama. Of all the reasons that these folks might choose not to vote for me liking Grey Poupon is pretty low on the list. So why don't I just, he's basically like, I'm just going to be me. And that worked for him. But now inverse it. Imagine that Obama really loved Grey Poupon and two options here, didn't want anyone to know. And it somehow became known he was out there pretending that he just eats, hot dogs with regular mustard all the time. It turns out somebody figured out that would be a big mistake. They figured out it's Grey Poupon. The other way to go, and this seems a little more Ron DeSantis-ish, is if he just assumed everybody loved Grey Poupon, and he went to like the I don't know, name a state fair in Southern Illinois, and was like, "Hey, how about some Grey Poupon? How much do we love grape?" I've been around politicians like that who don't know that they're awkward human beings, and you know what it is like. It's like Michael Scott running for office,
right?
And that's funny to watch from afar, right? It's funny to watch from afar, but if you were to meet Michael Scott, you would not stay in the room long. You would be cringeworthy, right?
Well, I think, your voters will forgive almost anything if you're honest with them about it. I think it's why Eric Adams does particularly well, why Bill Clinton survived as long as he did, and not a very popular opinion, but why Trump continues to be as strong as he is in the Republican primary is because he's a dirtbag. And to his supporters, they like the kind of dirtbag that he is. And yeah, he'll lie about a lot of things, but the big capital T truth about who Trump is not lost on anybody. Like his supporters, his haters, everybody. And I think Bill Clinton was particularly masterful at this, is that from the get-go, I was in elementary school when I knew Bill Clinton was sleeping with women who weren't his wife. It was baked into everybody's expectation of him. And the voters, when he did he did things that, in my opinion, very much crossed the line. And it's not only inappropriate, but perhaps worse. People kind of baked that in, and they were like, all right, like, yeah, there's some things here that I don't like, but it's not totally surprising. And he's winking at me.
But hold on. The other thing Bill Clinton did that worked for Bill Clinton that Ron DeSantis is not doing is that, because it's not like Bill Clinton was like, yeah, I sleep around. Like, he denied all that, and that was really, that is not what you would advise someone to do, right? But what Bill Clinton did is he made it very clear to people that he cared a lot more about their problems than he did about what people were saying about him. And I don't think anybody is getting a vibe from Ron DeSantis that he cares more about what's going on with the average American than he does about how his campaign is going. And that's, I think, at the heart of his problem.
Now, I'll say two things. First, I'm going to tie this to something that sounds completely unrelated, and I'm going to bring it back. That's what we do here. And I'm going to bring it back to the beginning. I fit in. I fit in, you guys. The beginning, we were speaking about Barbie, and one of the things I said about Barbie was that it was incredibly self-reflexive. It knew what it was. It took shots at itself. It mocked Mattel. It mocked the commercialization of Barbie. Like it made itself a target. And that's what made that's what made audiences, I think, be able to watch it and open up to it and enjoy it, despite knowing kind of the history of Barbie and understanding that this is a commercial product by a gigantic toy conglomerate. Ron DeSantis, to your point, is not self-aware, is not self-reflexive. And there was a clip of him just the other day where a reporter went over to him and they asked him, they said, "Hey, Ron, your campaign doesn't seem to be doing so well. Trump seems to be kicking your ass in the polls." He didn't use those words, the reporter, but that was the gist of it. What's your plan to win people back? And DeSantis turns to the reporter and he goes, "Just watch and see." And then he turns around and he put his arm around like one of the people who was there to see him, gave the most forced, most uncomfortable looking smile into the camera. And that, to me, epitomized everything wrong with this campaign. He also he doesn't know who he is, and there's no why to his campaign. Like, I still don't understand why he is running. Like, he keeps defending Trump. You think Trump was the best, right? You want to say Trump is the best. So Trump is running also. So if you're saying this guy was the best, then what the hell are you doing there? Then you're going to take like these half-assed shots at Trump, and you're going to try to awkwardly kind of run to the right of Trump on certain issues and kind of out Trump and give these like meekish, weird responses when asked about Trump's criminal trials. And it's like, he's so wishy-washy. And meanwhile, you you look at Florida, and it's more than just an appearance, but he's rightfully been branded as somebody who does not care about the people and only cares about himself. When you see the actual issues that Floridians are going through with teacher shortages, with skyrocketing insurance rates, with the highest inflation in the entire country, and then you see him gallivanting in New Hampshire, telling a guy who drove out 2 hours to see him to F off, there's a disconnect between him and the actual needs of people that even goes beyond his just general kind of meanness and overall awkward demeanor.
Well, he could run into trouble.
If you're going
to
answer,
yeah.
Well, hold on.
Oh,
I just want to say,
yeah.
if you're running for high office and you're going to answer a reporter's question with just watch and see, you have three options for what you do in the seconds that follow that statement. You can hit a 3-point shot on one attempt. You can play the saxophone on late night television, or you can order an ice cream cone and put on your aviators. Those are your three options. You can't just say just watch and see and then just walk away. You got to do something cool, which he cannot do.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead, Rob.
I think he's term limited out. I think in Florida, so I think he can't run as governor again. But you start to think about what is Ron DeSantis' future after this. It would have to be tethered to Florida after this if he's not really able to resurrect his national identity. Now, he certainly wouldn't be serving in a Trump cabinet under these dynamics. So the question you ask yourself is, well, where does he go from here? And I think he is mismanaging Florida and taking his eye off of Florida in a very Bill de Blasio-esque way, like from the right, meaning like when, as a New York City native, de Blasio was running for office right up to COVID and was not working particularly hard to begin with then, and then was the campaign, his sort of quixotic campaign, became a representation of all of the lack of energy and thought he was giving to the city of New York. And I think this is potentially what can happen to DeSantis. All those stats you're talking about, even his own botch, like his culture war stuff, which if there was one thing he seemed particularly invigorated by before he ran for president, it was all the culture war stuff. And, his botched rollout of these history standards where he's letting pass standards that even right-wing people are looking at and like, whoa, that's a bridge too far to say that slavery, helped slaves build skills that they otherwise wouldn't have.
You got to let some pitches go by, Ron. Some pitches, just take the pitch, man. You don't have 2 strikes on you necessarily. Let the pitch go. See another pitch.
Yeah, it's the thing, right? It's all in his own making. Like he is literally, it's unforced error after unforced error after unforced error. It's really one of the most disastrous campaigns from even before the launch that I could really ever remember. And it's kind of only going to get worse. And then literally there was the big story in NBC, Ron DeSantis campaign. Huge campaign reset. They are switching it up. And not a day later does Ron DeSantis go, I'm going to direct the state of Florida to investigate Bud Light.
I know.
And it's like, this is your reset? You're going to tell the state of Florida to investigate a corporation because they sent a few beers to a transgender person? Like that's your reset? Because that seems to be, you seem to be doubling down on all the issues. Then he had the staffer, another staffer post another deranged video following up on that anti-LGBTQ video that you guys had talked about on the show. This time it featured a Nazi symbol within the video, and then he had to fire that staffer along with a third of his campaign. So if this is the reset, this thing seems pretty dead in the water to me.
All right, let me just say before we go to an ad, the thing I want to talk about when we come back from the ad, so you have a moment to get your thoughts on it, is if you're one of these Republican presidential candidates that's going to be in this debate, clearly Trump is probably not going to be one of them. I feel like you have a few strategies to choose from going into this debate. And so I'm curious what you all, I know what mine would be. I know what the options are. I'm curious what y'all think the options are for their strategies in a debate without the front runner. So with that said, let's hear from a sponsor.
So if you're anything like me, you often have a sense of anxiety that you're signing onto these contracts and you're not exactly sure what you're agreeing to. And it seems like just everything gets more expensive, including wireless service. Like I've seen my wireless bills every year go up pretty significantly. And that's until I tried Mint Mobile. So after years of getting ripped off, I've learned that there actually is an exception to the rule, and it's Mint Mobile. They offer premium wireless starting at just $15 a month. And when I heard this, I was like, what is the catch? And apparently there isn't one. Their secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless directly online only. So they cut out all the costs of the retail stores and they pass those savings directly on to you, the consumer. And I love that. I love seeing a company that makes things less expensive to make. And instead of pocketing the profit, they make things cheaper. That's what I love about Mint Mobile. And this is high quality wireless service. So it's not just cheap, but it really works. And to me, it actually works better than my previous provider. I won't name them because I don't want to disparage anybody. But it's remarkable. They're able to offer the same, if not better, service for a lot less. So for anyone who hates their phone bill going up, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. They give you the best rate, whether you're buying for one person or for a family. And they have family lines starting at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And you could use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with your existing contacts. So it's super seamless. So you could switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. So to get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/majority. That's mintmobile.com/majority. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com, mintmobile.com/majority.
All right. So let's say you're one of these Republican candidates for president, and you're going into this debate where it certainly looks like the front runner is not going to show, because why would they? They're the front runner, and why show up and have everybody beat on you? Now, I think, as far as I can tell, and tell me if I'm missing any, there are 3 potential ways to go if you're one of these candidates entering this debate as to your actual strategy. One is for all of them to try to get together and say, hey, we have this platform. And I think we already know this is not going to happen, but is for them to say, we have this platform. This is our opportunity to band together as the other leaders in the Republican Party and just over and over, not attack each other, but make the case for why Donald Trump cannot be the nominee. Now, I think we all agree this would be the smartest thing for the Republicans to do, but I don't think they're going to do it because they're politicians and they're not. If history is any guide, they're not going to be able to get together to stop Trump. The second possible strategy, and this is the one that I think is the most likely for each of them to do, which is to try to stand out as best they can. Now, in some cases, that's going to mean being the one who attacks Trump. Like Chris Christie clearly is going to be the one more than anybody else who goes after Trump, and that's how he distinguishes himself. Now, others have the option of trying to do that as well. Chris Christie will be attacking maybe some of the others for not attacking Trump enough. Some of them will try and stand out by being a defender of Trump, which is an interesting strategy, but brings me to my third possible strategy, which is to go in assuming that everybody on the stage is probably going to make Trump mad at some point by not, kowtowing to Trump. And so it could just be audition for vice president. And I think it's going to be interesting to see who chooses what.
I think there are going to be 2 winners from this debate. This is my prediction. Chris Christie, because he is the clearest and the only person so far who's qualified who is all in on the anti-Trump message. And he's actually a very, very effective debater. Like he's really good at this. He has a lot of other issues, but he is very good at debate. He will without a doubt excel at this, and he will go at everybody on that stage for being, cozy to Trump and talking out both sides of their mouth, et cetera. Vivek will be the other winner because he has gone fully pro-Trump. He goes down to Miami, like when the indictment goes down, calls on everybody to pardon Trump. Vivek is going to win the, I am just straight up pro-Trump. And I'm not just auditioning for vice president, but cabinet, whatever. And if anything were to happen to Trump in the middle of this race, I want all of Trump's people to know I'm with them.
He's also poised to be the biggest winner. Well, he also has the most to gain because most of the people watching will be like, who is this guy? So that's a good point. Continue,
Yeah.
please.
He's not a very tall person, so I think that may like just come across. I don't know what the theatrics will look like. I'm not even trying to be mean because I'm not a tall person either, but it's like he'll have some optics issues, but I do think that he has the clearest pro-Trump position. Christie has the clearest anti-Trump position. The rest of them have tried to get it both ways and are going to sound weird on the stage. In my opinion.
Yeah, it's gonna be a mess, but it'll be entertaining. And I think it's honestly the ideal scenario for someone like Chris Christie. And I'm not saying it's going to help him in the polls because I think people like us are going to enjoy Chris Christie's performance at the debates, you know, and not so much the folks in a Republican primary. But I think Chris Christie, I think all these people basically are going to become sort of pseudo surrogates of Donald Trump at the end of the day. But they don't have the gravitas of Trump to fight back. They don't have the kind of same Trumpian ability to just shut people down with sheer force. And Chris Christie actually does have those qualities. And so the same way Chris Christie was ruthless to Marco Rubio in the 2016 debates, I think he could take that energy and he could turn that on all of these people who are going to just be kind of defending Donald Trump and saying why Donald Trump is so amazing. And yeah, they may throw in the occasional like, you know, we just need new blood, you know, which
we're going to hear a lot of that
fresh energy. You know, they're going to be all these comments on the periphery of like, you know, oh, you see what I'm saying? Kind of, it's going to be ridiculous, but ultimately you're going to have all these Trump surrogates on stage, just trying to out Trump each other. No, you're more anti-vax. No, I'm more anti-vaccine. No, I'm more anti-vaccine.
The Biden crime family.
Yeah, Hunter Biden. No, I hate American history more. Like they're just going to be out competing each other for these extreme positions. And then I think Christie, though, is going to be able to just actually focus and is going to pick these people off one by one during the debate. And there'll probably be a lot of booing and theatrics if, you know, they allow audience reactions, or maybe even if they don't, depending on how the debate is scheduled. But I think it's actually a good opportunity for Christie. And I agree with you and Vivek that just his presence there alone is a big win for him, who most Americans just, you know, don't know. And he seems to be there, I guess, for the perpetually online Republicans who are disenchanted by DeSantis, who see this guy kind of spouting similar things.
He's winning the all-in podcast vote.
That's his crew.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk quickly about country music. I love country music. This caught my attention because there's actually a left-right split within country music. It's been brewing for some time.
Finally, it's always been so right-wing. There finally is a left-right split.
But if you remember the Dixie Chicks, though, like it's been there. It's been there. And
yeah, but the Dixie Chicks, just like at the time, they just fully lost that whole thing. Now there's an audience for them.
I could go on a tangent of this, but I think whenever a country singer becomes left wing, we just call it folk music. It's a whole.
I know, that's what upsets me. I'm a country fan. I want them to stay a country musician.
Like Brandy Carlisle, for example, to me is a country singer.
So funny.
But but it's a whole separate discussion. I love country music. You know this, Jason, because we wrote something about Nashville where I smuggled as much country knowledge as I could into a very small document. But So Jason Aldean is this country singer who became famous for a song called Flyover States. And basically his brand has been, I'm about the small town. Now, parentheses, as he was coming to prominence over Flyover States, he allegedly was caught cheating on his wife in LA, which we won't go into. Now, he came out with a video called Try That in a Small Town. And this video is a political advertisement. Actually, it looks very similar to Trump's ad at the RNC, where basically Trump had all this footage of the protests and riots or whatever you want to call them in 2020. And basically the song is all about like, hey, you can't try that in a small town. Try to do it. And basically it's about like attacking police and businesses and all this kind of stuff. And there is definitely I would say that there is a mixture of races, but there certainly seems to be a tilt. And so Jason Isbell, another country singer, took a shot at Aldean and basically was like, not only did he basically said, you didn't write this song. He says, I dared Aldean to write this next single himself. That's how we do it in a small town. And Aldean went on TV. This is Aldean on MSNBC talking about this controversy.
Isabel talking about Aldean.
Isabel, sorry.
Well, I think in Jason Aldean's song, which he didn't write, other people wrote, but I think that what it appears to me that's happening is these sort of unfounded fears that small town Americans have. It's being capitalized on. So you're drumming up this fear that there's going to be riots in the streets and people burning the flag and people carjacking and the knockout game. I don't know how the knockout game wound up in this song. This is very clearly a debunked racist myth that people just, walk up and punch other people on the sidewalk. I don't know how this wound up in there, but pretty much all these things point to a very specific group of people as the perpetrator. And they say, you should be afraid of these people. And let me sell you something while you're afraid of these people. The way I see it, most of the issues in my small town in Alabama, Green Hill, Alabama, Florence, Muscle Shoals, that area, most of the issues there are based around addiction, opioid addiction, painkiller addiction, people not able to get a great education or keep a job. And I write about those things. When I write about a small town, I write about people who are addicted and trying to dig their way out, or people who are trying to take care of their family and have some pride in themselves. Because I'm not trying to sell somebody a product. I'm trying to make something that is art and something that is creative.
Mm-hmm. You know what the best thing about this whole deal is that more people are going to listen to Jason Isbell's music because that dude it's like between him and Lin-Manuel Miranda for the best lyricist working at the moment. Not just just his stuff is so great. And anyway, that's just my little.
No, I'm a huge fan. I saw him in London recently, and he's got a huge following there. And I saw him in New York the year before that. And he did a really interesting pandemic concert that was like a big moment. But I think what he's saying is fascinating because it gives us an alternative story. And a lot of Majority 54 listeners are from small towns. And he talked about the opioid epidemic and basically saying, look, like instead of inventing problems, let's talk about the one right on our doorstep. And on this very day, the Wall Street Journal dropped a story about an hour ago about how a hedge fund is basically pushing one of the drug makers who had to settle in the opioid epidemic to cut off $1 billion that they had settled on. So essentially declare bankruptcy and not pay $1 billion to families in small towns. Now that should be in that song. We can all agree on that. I don't know why we need to be fighting about this. Like instead of inventing problems, the things that are in this video, that footage is from outside of my door. That's a debate we have in New York City, right? And we can have a whole debate. We've talked about on this podcast about what's real and what's not. And there's actually a really interesting debate about what happened in 2020 that's been playing out ever since in a lot of cities. It's in part why we have Eric Adams as mayor of New York City. It played out in the mayoral election. It continues to play out every single day in the city council and in every election since. But that is not the issue facing small town Alabama or small town anywhere else for that matter. And it's totally disingenuous.
Yeah, I think the reason I think really the contributing factor that made this especially controversial, there's all the stuff that y'all have talked about, but I think what really got it into the news is his reference to the idea of you think you're going to take our gun, try that, basically implying that if you were to try and implement any sort of gun safety measure in a small town, you would get shot. And Jason Aldean, for those who don't remember, was the artist who was on stage at the time the Vegas shooting, the biggest mass shooting in the history of the country occurred. And I think Shannon Watts, frequent guest on this show and the founder of Moms Demand Action, is the one who pointed this out initially. And it's just all gross and for show.
It's definitely for show. And he also Aldean also is from a city with 150,000 people. He's not even really from a small town himself. A lot of the footage in the video was actually from Europe, even though he claimed all the footage was footage from America. And, he's clearly crafting this narrative. It's clearly aimed at kind of division and dividing people. At the same time, it's hard for me to want to be up in arms at every single cultural thing that happens in society. To your point, like there are things that people are suffering from in these small towns, and I think we should always bring the focus, back to that when we're talking about it, whether it's the opioid crisis or whether it's inflation hurting people's pockets. There are things that people are going through in small towns and all over America that I think our attention is better served, focused on rather than Jason Aldean, in general. But he's certainly, riding this wave, and he's taken the same, there's a space now for people who just kind of refuse to apologize and go all in on something. And they take that criticism and that quote unquote,
the irony.
Sorry, I was going to say they take that idea of, oh, look, I'm being canceled, and they ride it to the top of the music charts, or they ride it to sold out shows. They ride it to selling merch or getting donations. It's just a typical kind of grievance right-wing play that we just see time and time and time and time again. And I think folks know at this point, if I go all in on all this right-wing stuff, there'll be an audience who will defend me, who will send me their money, who will buy tickets to my shows, but I just need to be 100% unapologetically that way.
The irony is, in my opinion, of like this positioning of country music as this like right wing, let's be honest, like somewhat white nationalistic, sort of position, is like I've always loved country music for the same reason I love hip hop, which is they both are the two forms of music that I find most likely to tell great stories. And so what's interesting is so often the best stuff in either genre are stories about struggle and often poverty, because they're experienced so often in very urban areas and in very rural areas. And I don't know, man. I think at the end of the day, Aldean is like a pretty decent musician, but I think Isbell's point is that, Brett, the reason he chooses to pick to double down on a single audience is because he's not that good. Like if you're like, I'm good, but I'm not that good, you're like, I'm going to shore up one whole group because I don't have that much crossover. And anyway, but
what's fascinating is who looms large over all of this discussion is Taylor Swift, who came out as a country singer, but is obviously so much more than that. And she doesn't hide her politics at all, which is really fascinating. Has suffered no consequences for it.
And she's so good that it doesn't matter. Right. And
she could do anything.
And like, I think, because nobody is going to be like, it's the joke that people make about the difference between R. Kelly and Michael Jackson, where they're like, people are, they both have the same allegations. People are quicker to throw out one than the other because one had more songs that people don't want to part with, right? Like with Taylor Swift, plenty of people are going to disagree with her politics, but they're like, I just really like blank space. So I'm just gonna create a blank space in my memory for this idea and not do it. By the way, sidebar, we went to a Brandi Carlile concert once where she was the opener for, they were just trading off on the road for Jason Isbell. And we love both of them. And Diana, we had my in-laws watching the kids, and Diana was like, we've got to go home and so we watched the Brandi Carlile part, but not the Jason Isbell part. And we saw like two songs. And so Diana openly admits that she owes me one Jason Isbell concert. And I really need
we should
to
go.
So anyway.
Yeah, we should go. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. Well, I'm so happy we got our country music in. All right. Well, one for us. What's happening out there, guys? Before one for us, I want to throw in one more thing, because I know we're a little over time, but it's perfect for this show. Which is what the positive thing I wanted to end on, which is there are two current governors, one a Democrat, one a Republican, who have actually been guests on this show before, each of them, both friends of ours. One, the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, and the other, the Republican governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, who came together as part of, I think, a National Governors Association, like public service announcement, basically, and did this little video that we want to share about the concept of being able to disagree without hating each other. And I know that it's a little maybe corny and maybe a little, I don't know, idealistic, but it's also like perfectly on brand for what we're trying to get across to people on the show, which is not centrism. It's just having conversations without as much invective. We hope we're helping our listeners to do. And so because it is these two people talking about what we usually are pushing people to do, and it's two people who are friends of ours and have been on this show,
we wanted to play this for you real quick.
I'm Spencer Cox, Republican governor of Utah.
And I'm Jared Polis, Democratic governor of Colorado.
And we're here to help save your family dinners.
You know what we're talking about.
You're halfway through your second helping of mashed potatoes when your MAGA uncle decides to share his thoughts on the latest election conspiracy.
We all have that uncle.
Or instead of passing the salt, your woke niece passes along a particularly controversial fact that she read on social media.
Or maybe you're the one with the strong opinions. You know you're right. And the other side is a bunch of misguided weirdos. But there's a healthy way to deal with conflicting opinions. Actually, it's okay to disagree.
It's not just okay, it's crucial.
Did you just disagree with me about disagreeing?
Healthy disagreement means not assuming that the other side is deluded, misinformed, or actively trying to overthrow America.
A little respect and curiosity keeps resentment off the dinner table.
And out of your social media feeds.
Our nation was founded by people who profoundly disagreed.
So next time your uncle, your niece, or anyone else brings up that one topic that just drives you nuts, take a deep breath.
Be curious, ask questions. If you still disagree, that's okay, but you might find that you aren't as far apart as you think.
Conflict isn't bad. It's the way we disagree that matters. Please join us in showing America the right kind of conflict.
Together,
we can disagree better.
I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's wonderfully cringe, I would say. It's
It is. It's two politicians talk. It's meant to be cringe, but it has some messages in there that we push.
It's so on brand and dorky for the
Oh, it is. It is, but isn't it lovely?
I have look. I've never said a bad word about Jared Polis. I never will. I love the man. Obviously, I've got a lot of respect for Spencer Cox too. I routinely mentioned him as my favorite Republican in the country. They're totally nerdy and dorks and super cringy and very well intentioned. And I love the message.
To the point of our earlier conversation, that's what those two dudes are like in real life. They're pretty big nerds.
I almost mentioned Polis when I was going to mention Carl Dean, although he's a way better retail politician than Carl Dean.
You're gonna have a lot of people mad at you at the end of this episode, Robbie.
No, Carl really going to get mad at me over that.
But they are two guys who are pretty big nerds, but are like they embrace it, and it kind of works there. And what I liked about it was they were making the point that we consistently make, which is not you have to agree with people who say terrible things. But it is be curious, ask questions before you start. Like, try and figure out why they think that, and you'll get a lot further. I thought that was really cool. All right. With that said, we can do one for us. Brett, this is your first time on here, not as a producer, but on air.
Well, he watched two movies. We know what
this is so exciting. Yeah, I think I gave the whole breakdown on my whole weekend. That's really all I did, though.
That's true.
But it was fun. You guys know me. I work on Meidas stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a delight to get out of the house and see a couple movies. It was a nice change of pace. Robbie, what were you up to?
Well, I went out to LA.
Where in the world are you now?
I did LA
every time I see it.
I did LA, which was wonderful. I did downtown LA Arts District, which was really cool, and kind of bounced around a little bit.
I love it there.
It was hot, but I'm Indian. I like the heat. It was great. I came back here, and I'm heading up to Hudson and Saugerties areas. I know you know Jason really well. I'm doing tennis camp this weekend because I'm in this bet with a buddy of mine, Mickey, who whoever we're playing tennis the weekend after Labor Day, and whoever loses has to get a tattoo on their butt. And
you don't have any tattoos.
I have no tattoos, and so I'm taking my training very seriously. Yeah. So,
as well you should. Yeah. The only big life update I have is that I got a thing that is not COVID because I tested a week ago, and I have just been fighting it, and that's it. It's just a pretty standard, like I've been sick and it's really annoying. And I'm just coughing.
You've had it for a while. I think you had it as of the recording last week too.
Yeah. And that's the hard part is like, I know that I'm in that stage of it that I know I'm over being sick. I just have the residual like cough that comes with it. It's like a dry cough, which is terrible in this post-pandemic world. If I go literally anywhere and I'm trying to talk and I cough, like I've tried to mute myself often, but I've been coughing a lot during this. People look at you like you just opened sardines on a plane, which I've done once, so I know what that looks like. And it's like people are because they think I'm just super sick and going and coughing on everybody. And the truth is, I'm just having trouble. I don't have much wind right now. But anyway, That's, woe is me. Aren't things terribly difficult? Not really. All right. This was super fun. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hey, this is our first time having Brett on the air. Feel free to give him a review. I mean, why not? The guy could probably, who doesn't like people giving
Hit
feedback?
that like button. Hit that like button on
Hit the
YouTube.
like
Who doesn't
button.
like people judging them and giving them a 5-star rating?
Yeah.
I like what you did there. All right. So remember to subscribe to Majority 54 wherever you listen to audio podcasts. Just search Majority 54. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.